Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming. This is our second um, candidate interview for the superintendent. Okay. Would you all join me in standing for a word of prayer? Pastor Huff, would you like to pray for us?
Father God, we come thanking you for this wonderful day. Thank you for these wonderful minds. We come right now, Lord God, for business, and we just pray that everything we do will be decent and in order. We ask it all in your Son, Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, our candidate tonight is Dr. Jonathan Bart Reeves. Good afternoon or evening, Dr. Reeves.
Good evening.
We're so glad to have you here. And before we start our questions, our prepared questions, would you tell us and the audience a bit about yourself?
Yes, ma'am. I do not mind doing that at all. Wow, here being on stage, center stage at that. If there is a glare or a reflection, my apologies coming off of my head. So, anyway, first of all, let me say that my wife and I are proud to be here. We had a wonderful day today. We got to visit a couple of schools. We got to visit with the mayor and some other places and had a fine lunch by Mr. Kyler. He treated us to lunch today. Ms. Stewart was with us, and we just had a wonderful time, and I appreciate your kind hospitality. As she was mentioning, my name is Bart Reeves. I am from Geraldine, Alabama, in DeKalb County, about 30 miles from here. I am familiar with Gadsden. I've been coming to Gadsden since I was 5 or 6 years old. Basically, we would have family reunions at Nakalula, and we would run around the park, play putt-putt golf, go down to the bottom, just what kids do. And of course, Gadsden was always a place where we would come to the movies or to the mall. And so for that, I have, a general idea about Gadsden. And of course, I would not have applied for this position if I didn't want to be here. And I want you to know that as well. But my career started in Guntersville, Alabama, 1997. Started out as a high school teacher. The next year, I transferred to the middle school, where I spent the next 10 years of my career. I was a teacher there. I was also an assistant principal. And the best part of that is that's where I met my wife. We met as co-teachers at Guntersville Middle School and married shortly thereafter. And from Guntersville, I went on to Jackson County, where I was interim superintendent, and I'll get back to introducing my wife here in a few minutes. But I went to Jackson County as interim superintendent. I wanted to do something different. I'd been at Guntersville for 18 years. I'd been the elementary principal for the last 8, and a career goal of mine was to become superintendent. And what we decided to do, we moved from Guntersville to Jackson County when I was appointed. And I knew going in, we only had 16 months. Think about that, 16 months to win an election and to be reelected. But I never thought that was going to happen, because I knew going in, I was the stranger. I wasn't from that community, but I wanted to gain the experience. And I was there in a $50 million school system. I operated and managed that budget and gained a lot of experience while I was there. And of course, my wife and I knew there is a possibility that, we might have to move somewhere out of state. We might end up in South Alabama. We didn't know where we would end up, because we knew going in, chances are we're not going to beat someone in an election that's been there for 24, 25 years. We knew that going in, but we wanted the experience. So that's why I'm where I am today. We got a job in Jasper, Alabama. I'm the high school principal there, and I'll get into the experience part here in a few minutes. But I think probably I need to introduce my wife now, because really and truly that's why I'm where I am today. But I met my wife at Guntersville Middle School. Amy, if you'll please stand so everybody might see you, please. We have 3 wonderful children. As I told some of the board members earlier today, I have classmates who have grandchildren. And I have toddlers. I have a 5-year-old who will be 6 in about a week. I have his name is John Witt. I have a 4-year-old named Hadley. She is 4. And then I have a 1-year-old, and his name is Harper, and he's 17, 18 months. And of course, God had different plans for us. We wanted children earlier in our marriage. It was not meant to be, and wow, did we get them. So we got them quick, but we are very blessed, very fortunate with our family. So that tells you a little bit about me, and of course, we'll probably, with these questions, we'll probably talk a little more as we go on. My apologies for going over. So, thank you.
We appreciate you. Thank you. Mr. Haney, I believe you have the first question.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. What these are that we're starting with are the what I call the stock questions, the ones that you sent and had time to prepare for and prepare your answers. And then we'll come back and have some individual questions that go beyond or ask about your background, perhaps. So the first stock question is, what do you see as the role of the superintendent as it relates to employee groups, students, and the community and the Board of Education?
Have you ever really stopped and thought about what the superintendent does? Educators, have you ever really thought about that? Board members, have you really thought about that before? The superintendent is the CEO. He's the chief executive officer. He is over the organization. He or she is over the organization. And he or she is responsible for so many functions that take place in the school system. I'm going to name a few of those. Instruction, academics, curriculum, athletics, maintenance, special education, gifted, personnel, school grounds. You know, he or she cannot be an expert in all of those areas. It's basically impossible. You need a group of people who will help you move this organization forward. I heard somebody say one time, it's like a performer that has plates on his hands, his knees, his feet. And what is he trying to do with those plates? He's trying to get them moving all at the same time. As a superintendent, that would be my responsibility to make sure that everything is moving forward. It's not my job to micromanage. No, that's not my job. My job is to make sure we're all moving forward because that's what is right. That's what is best for our kids. So when you look at all the different functions, the superintendent is making sure that we're moving forward with everything that involves the superintendency in making a school system successful. I hope that answers your question, sir.
Yes, sir, and the follow-up to that right now is, why do you want to come to Gadsden?
Why do I want to come to Gadsden? As I mentioned earlier, first of all, I would not have applied if I did not want to be here, and I want everyone to know that. There's several reasons I'd like to be here at Gadsden. It's a beautiful place. Wow, y'all got a very beautiful place. You've got a lot to be proud of. It's also close to home. Keep in mind, my wife and I, when we moved off, when we, took this risk and went to Jackson County and then later on to Jasper, we left our support system. We left our grandparents. We're blessed that both of our parents are still living, but we moved off, and it would be nice to get closer to home. Also, with Gadsden, it's a great place to live. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to raise your family. I've heard that from talking with people today and people in the past. You've got a lot to offer. I think you've got a great school system, and I think it can even be better. And I want to be a part of that. And so those are the reasons why we applied. And when I say we, this is a family thing. This is why my wife is with me today. She's here today because this is a family decision. This is not a Bart Reeves decision. And to be quite honest with you, if you were to ask me how I prioritize my life, it's my faith, it's my family, and it's my job. My faith is number one, and family is number two, and then what I do is number three. And I strive to do the best I can in all of those areas. So, to get back to your original question, it's the attraction of Gadsden. Who wouldn't want to be here? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Reeves, we have 5 quality candidates for this position. Why should the board select you?
Okay. I'm positive that all of the applicants are fine applicants. I'm not going to talk for or against them, but all I can do is tell you who I am and what I represent. First of all, as your superintendent, I want to treat the children of Gadsden as my own. Let me say that again. I want to treat the children of Gadsden as my own. What does that mean? I've got 3 kids at home, and I praise them when they need praising. I discipline them when they need discipline. I support them. I am their advocate because I am their father. And I want them to be the best that they possibly can. And those are goals that my wife and I have set. So as your superintendent, I'm going to treat the children of Gadsden as my own. And that's important. And looking back over my career, that's what I've always done. As a teacher, as an assistant principal, as a principal, I treated the kids as my own because I wanted them to be successful. So that's the first part of my answer. Why me? Well, honesty, integrity. We're always going to do what's right. Always do what's right. I'm going to do what's right before my faculty, before my kids, before the community, because that's the right thing to do. And so integrity would be up there as well. Communication. I communicate with my board weekly. I communicate when I was superintendent at Jackson County. I communicate with my faculty on a regular basis. I communicate with the kids. Communication is a big one as well. Also, relationships. Relationships is huge. Think about that for a minute. Think about relationships. If you're going to move a group of people from point A to point B, number one, they need to respect you. They need to know that you're genuine. They need to know that you're sincere. And they need to know that you've got their back, that you support them, and you're doing what's right for kids. And if they believe those things, you can move them from point A to point B. If I'm your superintendent, I'm not going to come in here with hidden agendas. I'm not going to try to pit board members against one another. We're going to come in here, we're going to work together and do the absolute best job that we can. That's what I believe in. That's important to me. So relationships is very important. I hope so far, a few minutes into this interview, you've discovered that I'm very passionate. I love what I do. And if I had to do over and going to school, going to the University of Alabama, I'd do it all over again. I love what I do. As a teacher, as an assistant principal, a principal, superintendent, I enjoy what I do because I know I can make a difference. And that's why I want to be your superintendent. I know I can make a difference in this community. And then finally, strive for excellence. In everything that we do, we're going to strive for excellence. Whether it's athletics, academics, fine arts, we're going to do the best that we possibly can. We're going to have high expectations because we owe it to our community, but more importantly, we owe it to the students of Gadsden. And I'll end with this. And as your superintendent, I want to lead this school system to be a model school system for the state. I want it to be a world-class school system. And again, that's with us working together. That's getting community support as well and moving in the direction that we need to for the children of Gadsden.
Okay, Dr. Reeves, what steps would you take to create a culture of learning and high expectations among the employees in our school system?
Okay. All right. Thank you for the question. First of all, I want to talk about 2 areas, academic emphasis and collective efficacy. What do we mean by academic emphasis? Everybody's going to know that the reason we're at school is for kids to learn, student achievement. We will emphasize academics. Custodians will know that it's important. Maintenance staff will know that it's important. Teachers, administrators, community members, everybody will know that academics are important. We're going to protect instructional time. We're going to teach bell to bell. We're going to look at best teaching strategies and making sure that they're implemented on a regular basis. So that's what we're talking about when we look at academic emphasis. The second one, collective efficacy, the belief that we can make a difference. Do we believe that? Does our community believe that? Does the board believe that? Do you believe that the educators in this system can make a difference? You know, I was talking with a teacher a few minutes ago, coming into the building, and economics teacher, a government teacher. And I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I promise I won't embarrass you wherever you may be. But she said, we've got a great staff here, and I believe that. And she wants the best for this school district. And I think I'm the one that can come in here and help get that going in the direction that it needs to. I'm not saying it has or has not, but I promise you, if I'm your superintendent, I know we can make that go in the direction we need to. But collective efficacy, that's just the belief in one another that we can make a difference. And then, of course, I like to make it personal. For example, let's say that a teacher was doing XYZ in the classroom that was inappropriate, unacceptable. Basically, they were not doing their job. The way I would handle that, I would talk to that teacher. Well, I would want my principals to do that because that would be their job. But basically, this is how I would handle it. What if that was your child in that classroom and nothing was being done? How would that make you feel as a parent? Because I know there are parents out there, they want the best teachers year in, year out. And there are teachers who want that of their own children. But yet, I think there are teachers out there that sometimes do not do their job. And first of all, you want them to understand the importance in their job. And when you make it personal, then I think you can get them to move from point A to point B. And then finally, just again, I'm just going to reiterate, in everything that we do, you know, academics, athletics, and fine arts, you know, we're going to have high expectations because, again, it's the right thing to do. So that would be my answer for you.
Thank you, Dr. Reeves. How have your previous experiences prepared you to be the superintendent of this school system?
Well, I know I talked just a little bit about my previous experiences, but I've been very blessed. I've worked in some really good school systems. I've been blessed in different positions to prepare me to becoming superintendent. Again, principal at an elementary school. Well, let me just back up. I've worked at all levels in education, from elementary all the way to the central office, middle school, and of course at the high school as well. I've been a superintendent over a large school district with 650 plus employees, 5,500 students approximately. I've also, in my role as superintendent, I was also over 18 schools, which would mean 18 principals and 6 directors. I've also worked with a $50 million budget. So when you look at that experience alone, I'm very fortunate because I know that I can come in here and lead this school system. But there's other experiences too that have led me to this table. You know, well, I want to talk about some of this while I was at Jackson County. You know, just the experience going through budgeting and finance. You know, through that year and a half. That's very important in superintendent work. State monitoring. I was there when we were monitored by the state. We received great recommendations from the state. I was also there when we were going through advanced ed, so I've got that experience as well. Personnel matters. You know, as it relates to personnel, I dealt with a little bit of everything, from holding employees accountable to terminating contracts from time to time, to suspensions with and without pay, you know, just because the decisions had to be made. I've been involved with the hirings and transfers that would take place in the school system. And of course, I think we had well over $3 million in building projects that were taking place. And as a superintendent, you need to know the laws as it relates to bids and things of that nature when you take on these building projects. And of course, the weather calls. You know, living here in Alabama, it's going to be one way one day, and you know it might be colder or hotter the next day. But nonetheless, you've got to be prepared for that. You know, the day before, so that you can get that information out to parents and to families because they've got to find a place for their kids to go. You know, I remember getting on social media and just announcing that we will make a decision by so and so time. And do you know how much that helps people? We didn't make a decision right then, but hey, we're going to make it by 7 o'clock. And just getting that information out there is very helpful, because at least now, okay, well, let's give them to 7 o'clock. The decision will be made. Then we know what to do with our kids. Those things are very important. So, you learn those things on the job. You know that those things are important. And again, my experience as superintendent was invaluable. I'm glad I did exactly what I did. And again, I knew that I'd probably be there for about 16 months. Jasper High School, where I'm currently now, I'm the high school principal. I'm also the building principal. And what I mean by that, we have 2 schools in one. Okay? In Montgomery, it's looked at as 2 schools, but really and truly, we're on one campus. And we've got a little over 1,200 students in that building. We do have a junior high principal, junior high staff that he is responsible over. Ultimately, I'm responsible for all of them. So I'm in a large school, and we have well over 125 faculty and staff members. And I operate a $600,000 budget at the high school. So that has prepared me as well. And then finally, I spent 18 years in Guntersville, just right up the road. I was comfortable there. We had a nice house, everything going in our favor, in our direction. We were comfortable. But I knew I wanted to be superintendent. And I knew I needed to start making those advancements and those steps to Jackson County and now, of course, Jasper to get to where I want to be. So I guess you can say I'm chasing a career. I want to be superintendent. I want to be your superintendent. But at Guntersville, I served on all kinds of committees, leadership roles, worked in the central office there at Guntersville as well as the assessment and accountability coordinator. So I've got a lot of experience, and I'm ready to take on this role.
Thank you, Dr. Reeves. Could you describe how you will attain support from the Board of Education for candidates you intend to recommend for employment?
Yes, sir. First of all, if I may, I'd like to talk about the relationship first. The superintendent and the board will work closely together. That's very important. And to describe that relationship, it's kind of like a marriage. You want to be open and honest with one another. You want to communicate with one another. You don't want surprises. I don't want to show my wife up in public. I don't want her to show me up in public. And of course, I would expect the same thing of you as a board. We've got people watching our every move. Obviously, we've got 2 cameras on us right now. And people are watching, and they want to make sure that we're modeling behaviors that we need to be for our kids, for our teachers, for our citizens, because we're professionals. And those things are important. I'll never pit one board member against the other. I'll never do that. I'm not one to get into drama, because it's not going to help us. We're here for the kids of Gadsden. We're here for the teachers of Gadsden. We're here for the community of Gadsden. So those things are important to me. And I promise you, I'll work hard for you. If there was a 5-2 vote and I was your superintendent, I'm going to work hard to get the 2 who voted against me to my side. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that as a challenge. Because in order to move the school system forward, we have to work well together. That's very important. So to get to your question, how do you obtain support? Number one, we're going to hire the best people we possibly can, from the custodian to the CMP worker to the teacher to the principal. And that's what I'd expect of my principals, to hire the best people you possibly can. You remember that story I said a few minutes ago about making it personal? You got a great teacher on one hand, and maybe this other teacher is just someone in the community that everybody knows, but yet you know that this one is a rock star, and this one, well, they'll do an okay job. If it's your child and you get to decide where you want your child to be with one of those teachers, you're probably going to choose the rock star. So as a principal, as a superintendent, we want to get the best people possible in these jobs. That's how important this is. We want our kids to be successful. We want teachers to come in here and motivate our kids. We want our kids to be successful, so we've got to get the best people in here. And the reason we do that, well, let me turn over the page here. By doing so, student achievement will increase, school climate will become better, productivity will increase, with our maintenance and our custodial staff, because you're hiring great employees. And then the employees that are currently here, you continue to develop them, give them opportunities to be successful. So going back to the original question, how do you obtain support? We're going to hire the best. That's very important. Also, when we're working on the agenda for you that would go out to you that you get to review, I think for 48 hours, if I'm not mistaken, before the board meeting, I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to have my directors in there, and we're going to pick up the phone. We're going to call you, Mrs. Kelly Cochran, and we're going to call you, and we're going to go over the agenda with you. And then if you have concerns over an employee, maybe something I didn't know about or the principal didn't know about, then we're going to look into that. And if we need to take them off the agenda, then we would do that if it's a legit concern. So that's how I would obtain their support. But again, the goal is to hire the absolute best. I would like to just talk about an example that took place when I was superintendent. I talked about relationships a few minutes ago and trying to obtain the trust of personnel. That's so important. And week one on the job as superintendent, had a board member call and he looked at the recommendation list, and I had someone on there that he did not approve of. And it was someone that the supervisor had recommended. And he wanted me to remove that individual off of the agenda. Do you see what kind of predicament I was in? Number one, I was there 1 week into the job. But number two, I need the support of my staff, that I can trust them to do their job and to do it well. That's important. Again, relationships, moving from point A to point B. So I discussed that with the board member. He finally accepted. Later, he calls me and said, actually, we've got a problem. This individual falsified his application. Come to find out, that's what took place. I called the one who gave a reference that he put down for a reference, and I did not get a favorable response. So now we're about to put somebody in our school system that we do not need in the school system. And he might be a fine individual. I don't know. I didn't know him. But I learned a great deal just in that 1 week. And that was a relationship that I had with the board member. And I respected him. But at the same time, when he came back with that information, I knew I needed to pull that individual off the agenda. And it was the right thing to do based on the information that was given to us. But I learned a lot about my supervisor and also the board member, because he wanted to do what was right as well. And I appreciated that, him doing that. So that's kind of an example of my reasoning and justification there.
Dr. Reeves, discuss the most difficult, and I think you probably have hit on that, personnel problem you have ever dealt with and how you received it.
In my 21 years, I go back to experience, and I've had the opportunity to experience a lot. Some of the most difficult things I've ever done is let people go because they were not performing. These are people that have husbands and wives and children, and that's not fun to do. But when you try to give them opportunities to be successful, you give them opportunities to perform, you give them opportunities with professional development, and they're still not coming along like you need them to, then you have to cut ties with people from time to time. And again, that's not a fun thing to do. So that's difficult. The most difficult thing I've ever been faced with, and it was an inappropriate student and teacher relationship. Remember when I alluded to earlier about making things personal? I cannot imagine if my child was involved in an inappropriate relationship with someone that's supposed to be a role model. I cannot imagine what that would be like. Educators, we're in the business of educating our kids. We're not in the business of investigations. But sometimes that is needed. And I received a phone call from a parent where it was rumored that this was going on. And of course, I picked up the phone. I called DHR number 1 to let them know of the report that had been reported. Number two, I called my board attorney, and I let him know what I was planning on doing on how we're going to investigate this. And he gave me some pointers as well. And then he also suggested that I call the board attorney. And long story short, going through not the board attorney, but the district attorney. But long story short, we investigated and come to find out that did take place based on our evidence. Now, again, I'm not sure where it is in court today, but based on our evidence, we knew then that there was a good chance that it took place. Let me put it that way. And that was tough, but it was the right thing to do. And again, educators are hired to teach, to be role models, to do what's right and what's best for kids. So that was the most difficult thing I've ever done, but it was the right thing to do.
Dr. Reeves, what are your expectations for student achievement?
I was wondering how you were going to ask this question. I didn't know if we were going to go through the whole question at one time, and my wife and I, they'll go through the whole question at one time. You're going to go one at a time. Okay. My expectations for student achievement, you go back to academic emphasis. You go back to high expectations. We're going to have high expectations of our kids. We're going to have high expectations of our teachers because it's the right thing to do. So just looking at high expectations, yes, ma'am, we're going to look at high expectations. We're going to have high expectations.
Okay. So that kind of answers, do you believe all children can learn at high levels? You're going to expect?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All children can learn. And if we as teachers and administrators do not believe that, we need to get another job because all kids can learn. Yeah, we're going to get them at different levels. And, some are going to come in low, some right here, some up here. But wherever we get them as teachers, it is our job to elevate them, to bring them up as high as we possibly can. You can look at, state assessments at the end of the year and get a snapshot of what's going on. But really and truly, I'm not a fan of that. I'm a fan of progress monitoring. I'm a fan of star reading and star math and look at them at the beginning of the year. And I think we're kind of doing that in Scantron throughout the state now. But look at what they're doing in August, and let's see how far we can grow them. That's what we should be looking at. And we should be growing our kids when it comes to student achievement. So that would be my answer. Do I believe all children can learn at high levels? Absolutely.
Eliminating the achievement gap is a moral commandment. What approaches would you pursue specifically addressing the middle population of students?
Okay. Well, this would be my approach. You asked 4 questions. What do we want our students to learn? Looking at the curriculum, looking at the standards, and looking at the objectives. Okay? Number 2, how do we know when they have learned it? You do that through assessments. What do we do when they don't know it? Well, that's your teacher response. That's their job. And then finally, how will we respond if they already know it? Well, we don't need to keep teaching things that they already know. But if they do know it, we send them on to something more enriching. And of course, we're talking about kids who are engaged. We're talking about kids who are gifted. But that's the approach. And you've got to have those conversations on a regular basis in your school. You've got to have data meetings. You've got to look at best teaching practices. And then, of course, as administrators, we need to be getting into those classrooms to ensure these things are going on. And I go back, teaching bell to bell. That's non-negotiable. I'm going to expect that of my principals, of my administrators, to make sure that's taking place. And again, I'm sure 99% of the classroom, I'm sure that is taking place. But again, we've got to have those conversations because our job is to help our kids with student achievement. Our job, student achievement is the number one thing we do outside of school safety. And I know the questions don't really go into school safety, but that's the most important thing we do. If we come to school with 1,500 kids, we want 1,500 kids to go home. But outside of student safety, student achievement is the most important thing that we do. That's our job. That's our responsibility. I want to talk just a little bit about some of the data that I pulled up. Looking at the report card, um, that Dr. Richardson put out just a few weeks ago. He had a quote, and the quote was this was the memo that he sent to superintendents. The most serious issue facing our state right now is the gap between graduation and college readiness standards. As a state, we're 87% graduates. We're at 66% college and career readiness indicators, meaning 66% of our kids are receiving a college and career readiness indicator. For those of you that may not know what that is out in the audience right now, I'm going to talk about a few of those. To receive the college and career readiness standard or indicator, one way to do it is dual enrollment or taking a college course. So once that's checked, you enter that into the student data portal. Okay. Another way to receive an indicator is making a certain benchmark on the ACT, whether it's science or math or whatever or whatever the case may be. That's another way that you can receive an indicator. Another one is through the ROTC. 3 successful semesters or years with the ROTC. That's another way. Or if a student goes into the military once they leave Gadsden, that's another way that one can receive an indicator. And when I was looking at the data, I noticed we're graduating 82% of our kids here in Gadsden. When you look at the indicator, the CCRS indicator, we are at 56%. So we have a gap of 26%. And I think we can narrow that gap. What we have done at Jasper, what we're doing right now, we've got a team of educators who make sure that all of this information is entered into the student data portal to make sure that we keep that gap as narrow as we can. Last year, and I was not there last year, we had a 91% graduation rate, but we had a 78% CCRS rate. So we had a gap of about 13%. By the way, another way is work keys assessment that's given to seniors. We want, number one, we want all of our seniors to take that assessment, but we also want them to score at 2 of the highest levels. I think it's gold and silver, but it could be platinum and gold. Please don't hold me to that, but I do know it's the top 2 levels. And if they score that, then of course they're going to receive an indicator as well. So you want to narrow that gap, because what is the purpose of education? We either want them to go to college or we want them to pursue a career or possibly the military. That's the purpose of education, in addition to producing quality citizens, productive citizens. So that is important, and we've got to narrow that gap. If I'm your superintendent in the first year, there will be a lot of observations, things that, okay, let's see how we do things, and going into year 2, we'll start making some changes. But there are some things we need to change right now, and that would be one of them. And maybe measures have taken place here in the past year, because this data is based on school years 2016 and 17. But maybe measures have been in place to help that. I don't know if they have or have not. But I do know, as your superintendent, in the summer, we will start looking at that, and we will see that how we can narrow that gap, but also increase our graduation rate. We need to be at 90 plus, not at 80 to 82.
Thank you, Dr. Reeves.
Can I ask a follow-up on that, Dr. Reeves?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What my concern is that what would you do in order to ensure that our students that have advanced academic diplomas are in fact, that diploma is what it says it is, and the skill base and the knowledge sets that come with that advanced academic diploma are there?
And that's kind of the message that Dr. Richardson's putting out with graduation. You're saying that you're graduating 90%, but yet only 70% are receiving an indicator. So something's wrong there. And I think I know exactly what you're talking about. If you're on the advanced diploma, I hope you're being challenged. I hope the curriculum is rigorous. I hope that there is a healthy struggle, and that you're learning and trying to accomplish the objectives that have been set forth by the teacher, and that When you're in the advanced diploma, it's exactly what it is. It is advanced, and you worked hard to earn that diploma. I would hope that that would be the correlation between the two. I hope I'm answering your question, but I may not
Well,
be.
let me fine tune it a little bit. Can you agree with me that in no way should a person that's holding an advanced academic diploma have to take remedial classes once they get to the junior college level?
Absolutely,
I thought so.
absolutely. You know, if you're taking remedial classes in college, you're losing money. You know,
Exactly.
our job is to prepare you when you leave 12th grade, when you leave this high school, and you should not be taking remedial classes. And, you know, we need to make sure that we're putting you in the classes where you really and truly need to be based on your levels. And again, as a state, we've got to do a better job of that. We've got to prepare our kids for college, for those who are wanting to go into college. So I agree with you.
I think you, my question was going to be number 8, but you just covered that, the closing the achievement gap, et cetera. So I'm going to skip to number 15 if you want to look at that and ask the question, describe specific strategies you would use to promote public support for school activities, budget, and instructional programs.
Okay. I'll be happy to answer that question, but I did put one of my answers in the second part of the question, the one that you skipped. Had I known that, I would have put that in the first. I do want to talk about something that's very important, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Talk away.
You know, you talk about the graduation rate. You talk about student achievement. You know, how can we increase the graduation rate? How can we increase student achievement? How can our kids do better on the ACT? How can they do better in work keys? How can they do better in this and that? Well, first of all, we got to get our kids to school. We've got to get our kids to school. The same data that I pulled looking at the CCRS and looking at graduation rate, well, it also talked about attendance. And this is alarming. This is concerning. You know, I mentioned a few minutes ago that we'll go through, I want to observe the first year before making, you know, major decisions on things. Some things need to be made right now. We've got to get our kids to school. Let me look at this. Let me call out a little bit about chronic absences. 2016-17, 45% of the kids in the high school miss 15 or more days of school. That's the minimum. What that is not telling us are the kids that miss 25 days, 35 days, 55 days. It's telling us the kids who miss a minimum of 15 days of school. I believe we're on the block schedule here. Am I correct?
Yes.
Missing one day is like missing 2. So let's go ahead and change this up and say 30 days. That's what it would be like. If you miss a day in block, you're missing like 2 days. We've got to fix that. If you want student achievement to increase, you want graduation rates to increase, we've got to get our kids to school. I don't know what the issues are, but that would be a conversation that I would have with directors, and we would come up with the best plan to get our kids to school. Are we lacking in truancy? Are we not turning in parents who are not sending their kids to school? I don't know. Are we not reporting it accurately, which could be the case too? I don't know. But those would be conversations that we would have because we've got to get our kids to school. So that was the part that I felt like we needed to address. So
Absolutely, and thank you. I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you probably had answered. I just didn't want to be redundant. So thank you for that information. That was significant. Go ahead, Mr. Kyler.
Dr. Reeves, describe your experience in developing, implementing, and evaluating curriculum and instructional programs to raise student achievement.
About this time last year, I had a conversation with Dr. Richardson. He was not the interim superintendent then, but you may or may not know Dr. Richardson, but he's been president of Auburn University. He's been our state superintendent, and he's the one that they put back in the superintendent seat just to bring stability to education in the state of Alabama. He's a fine individual with a lot of integrity that everybody respects. And he told me, he said, Bart, there is no magic bullet. There is no silver bullet in education. And if there was, everybody would be doing it. That makes sense. Whatever program it might be, whatever curriculum it might be, everybody would be doing it. But it's not that simple. It's a little more complicated than that, or it can be. But what I would do in developing and implementing curriculum, first of all, you've got to have teacher buy-in. You need your best teachers, your strongest teachers, when you're trying to decide what is it we're going to teach, how will we know if kids learn it, what will we do when they don't learn it, what will we do when they do learn it. You've got to have those conversations, as I talked about a few minutes ago. But you've got to have your best teachers involved with programs that you're bringing into the school system. I worked with someone one time where, I won't call out the program, but it was forced on the teachers, but yet he did give them a chance to try it out. But the leadership team, they didn't want it because the graphics were bad. They felt like it was not rigorous enough. They felt like it would not move our kids. And the program was very expensive. And it was forced on them. I don't know if that's the right way of doing business. I want my teachers to have buy-in. I want them to say, hey, Dr. Reeves, yeah, we need this. This is great. This is wonderful. How can we get it to all of our schools? And then as superintendent, what I'm going to look at, first of all, how much is it? And then can we sustain it? We might be able to pay for it now, but we'll be able to pay for it in years 2 or 3. So those are the conversations that I'm going to have with my directors and supervisors and principals, and also the teachers as we bring them all together to look at the curriculum, how we're going to implement it. That's just something that I've always done. And, just right down the road at the Gadsden Center, when I was working on my dissertation and one of my classes, the guy, he kept talking about when making decisions, you need to look at expertise and experience. We need to look at those teachers that have a lot of experience and have expertise when making decisions that's going to go back into their classroom. Doctor or nurse? Nurse. If you were to ask me nursing questions right now and wanted my advice on something, I'm going to fail miserably. So obviously you would not be consulting with me on that. But as we put things into the classrooms, we need to consult with our teachers. I haven't been in the classroom in 15 years. Now I have in terms of going in there, evaluating and observing classrooms and that kind of thing. But as a teacher, I have not. So I need to rely on my teachers when making decisions that's in the best interest of our kids. So that's how I would evaluate curriculum and implement it. Plus, we would try it out. I would give it to the strongest teachers, try it out for 4 or 5 weeks, and then I would want them to report back to me and let me know what they're finding. That's important too. And that's a practice I've done as a principal and also as superintendent.
Okay, Dr. Reeves, what do you think is the role in the career technical education?
When you go back and look at the purpose of education, as I talked about earlier, that's to get kids ready for college or prepare them for a career. And all of our kids are not going to college. That's the reality of it. And so when you're looking at career technical education, it's one of the best kept secrets in the state with some of the things that we're able to offer. When I was superintendent at Jackson County, we had an outstanding career tech program. Prior to that, my knowledge was very little in the career technical field because I was coming from elementary. We're really not talking about those things in elementary that much. But I got to see a lot about the HVAC program, the machinery, carpentry, auto mechanics, and the various other programs, electrical, that was being offered. And I got to observe that and got to see the kids and their interests, in taking on those projects. And it was then that, hey, this is a great and wonderful thing. This is very important. So, yes, it is important. I wish we would have had a chance to see that today. I know that you talked about it today and described what we have here. Wow, I was blown away because typically in your city systems, they may take on 1 or 2 career tech teachers, but they send the rest of them to the county, and they're sharing facilities. And not probably the best way of doing things, but sometimes it's ideal when you're looking at cost. And it works, but just finding out that we have those things here, I was quite impressed, and that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Again, we're trying to get kids ready for life. Some are going to choose college, some are going to choose a career path immediately. And if we can get them into that career path now in 10th and 11th and 12th grade, it's only going to help them be more successful later in life. So 2 thumbs up on career technical education. It's a great thing.
Thank you. You sort of alluded to this in your introduction. What strengths do you have in the area of financial management, including budget development and ongoing fiscal management? Please give concrete examples.
Okay. As superintendent, I manage a $50 million budget in Jackson County. And as a high school principal, it's a $600,000 budget now. As superintendent, budget development would begin late spring. We would get our appropriations from the state funding that we were going to receive, the number of units that we were going to receive, and I would start getting with my directors then and my CSFO, and we would start talking about, okay, based on the funding that we're receiving, do we need to reduce our local units? Do we need to move people around? So those conversations start happening early in the spring. And again, you work closely with your CSFO. You need to have a conversation daily with your CSFO. Now, he or she is the expert in those matters. I can't be the expert in everything, but I need to know a little bit about everything. And but we would work closely together. And I want to give some of those examples. Well, first of all, from a department heads, I would require a budget of them every year, or the year that I was there, the 60 months I was there. So transportation, maintenance, special ed, all would have to turn in a budget to the CSFO. They would have to take the time, put the time into it to create their budget, and then of course the CSFO and I would get together and we'd start working on that budget together. So that, again, that was an invaluable experience. That's one of the most important things that we do. Looking at examples, trying to make sound decisions. We had a company when I got there that replaced air filters for the school system. And there was concern that they were not being replaced regularly. And we were paying out $10,000 a month. And if you do the math, that's $120,000. So what we decided to do, I terminated the contract with that company, and we shifted some personnel around in maintenance. And now one of our maintenance workers was taking on the job of replacing air filters. That was a significant cost savings. And you've got to be thinking that way as you're trying to be good stewards with the citizens' money. You got to be thinking like that. That's how we think. With our own household. How can we save money to make sure we're not wasting? So that's one example. A second example, garbage business. Jackson County at the time was the only school system in the state that was running its own garbage business to 6 of its schools because they did not have a municipality where the city would take care of it. So we had a dump truck. We had a man who drove the dump truck every day, and that was his job, was to go to those 6 schools every day to load the garbage and go dump it. Okay? So what we decided to do, we decided to bid it out. And we received a $5,000 a month bid. And if you do the math, that's $60,000. Well, we were paying a guy, we were paying him and looking at the truck costs and the expense of the fuel and various other things, we were losing money. And what we decided to do was go with that company. And we moved the guy that was driving the truck into changing the filters. So we were creative in how we were moving our employees around in order to save money. So that's one thing that we did. And also we decided to sell the truck because we didn't need it anymore, because we made the decision to bid it out. And again, those are conversations you've got to have with your directors too. If you're the special ed director, how can we save money in this area so that we can put more money into the classroom in special ed? You just got to ask those questions. And so anyway, that's an example. Also, our maintenance workers were driving uh, the trucks back home every day, back and forth from home. I put a stop to that. As individuals, we drive to work, we drive home in our own personal cars, and that was not the case there. So we parked the vehicles. It wasn't to be ugly, to be mean, or anything like that. But folks, we don't get a lot of money in education, and we need to preserve whatever we can to put it back into the classroom. So you've got to make those type decisions every now and then. It's probably going to hurt feelings every now and then, but it was the right thing to do. And as far as I know, they're still doing it today. They drive their own vehicles to work. They get their assignment for the day. They get in their work trucks, and then they go perform their duties. So that was necessary. Uh, Another example, federal programs. I think for the last 10 years, we were outsourcing this to different individuals in the surrounding area. We were paying 6 individuals $150,000 total. So 6 into one. Didn't work quite out like that. But some would get paid 22,000, some 23, some 18, some 12. But all that together ended up being about 150,000. So what I decided to do, I talked to supervisors and the CSFO, and I said, what if we hired one individual to do this work? Number one, can they do this work, or is that too much for them? So we looked at it carefully, and we decided that, yeah, it can be done. And again, that is still being done today. That one individual was responsible for these federal programs and writing these grants, and now we didn't need the help of 6. So we were able to save money in that way as well. And again, more money back into the classroom, back into the program. It wasn't to hurt feelings or make anybody mad. It's just, we've got to run it as a business. We've got to preserve that dollar so that we can put those dollars back into the classroom. So that's what we did.
Thank you, Dr. Reeves. Could you describe your experience with strategic planning?
I've had a significant amount of experience with strategic planning. Basically, this is something you do every year. As a principal, it's school improvement plan. That's when you bring in all of your stakeholders, some of your teachers, your leadership team. All right, let's reflect back on the previous year. What are some things we're doing well? What are some things that we're not doing so well in? And let's make sure we have a plan to correct those things. So then you start looking at objectives and goals, and you start talking about everything to make that situation better. Now, I do know that school systems have strategic plans at the board level. I have been a part of those as well. We had one school system where we did or performed a SWOT analysis. What that means, you look at all the strengths, and this is when you bring stakeholders in, community members, parents, teachers, principals. But you look at the strengths, you look at the weaknesses, just come up with everything that you possibly can as it relates to the school system. And then you start looking at opportunities. You start looking at threats. A threat might be that 2 or 3 businesses are considering going out of business here in the town. That is a significant tax base for the school system. So that could potentially be a threat. Opportunities, what are we doing to try to bring business into town, to increase our numbers, to increase our tax base, to help education. So I've had a lot of experience as it relates to strategic planning.
Dr. Reeves, when a new superintendent is hired, you want to make the transition as smooth as possible for everyone. How would you help both the education community and the community at large adjust to the new governance style that would come with a new superintendent?
First, you go out and meet as many people as you possibly can. I think y'all were a little concerned that I may not come back into the building after I had walked in, but then I got out there and I was talking to some guys at the car, and we were talking about mutual friends and things of that nature and various other things. And first of all, I'm going to meet as many people as I can. And I'm very personable. I think I've got a really good personality. I think that's the reason my wife married me, to be honest with you. But she likes to tell me that I married up and she settled. So that's probably not up for debate, I'm sure. But number one, you've got to be approachable. You've got to have a good personality. You've got to get out and meet people. Because again, if you're going to move people from point A to point B, you've got to have them on your side. And I'm going to work closely with the local delegation, with the city, with the county, with the state. And as you're building on the relationships, they're more willing to help you get from point A to point B, whatever that might be. But building relationships is huge. It's so important. Now, what would I do, for the school system? I want to meet with my central office staff. I want to know more on what they do, what their tasks are, what their job function is. I want to meet with my principals individually and collectively. I want to meet with the schools just to let them know a little bit about me, what I stand for. So you start having those meetings as well. I'd like to go into the communities and have meet and greets and try to get as many parents there as possible. And I understand that, we do struggle in trying to get parents into schools. And we've got to do a better job with that. We've got to have programs. I think that's one of the things that help get parents into the schools. Veteran Day programs, Christmas lunches, Thanksgiving lunches. I don't know if those things are going on consistently here, but those are things that we need to plan on, to plan for, because that's what gets the parents into the building, and they're going to see their superintendent. If it's me, they're going to see me in the schools. I want to know what's going on. I want to get in the trenches and talk with my teachers and know, hey, tell me a little bit about your day. Tell me about your struggles. Tell me about the great things that are taking place. Teachers today, I mean, they're stressed to the max. And I'm speaking of teachers at Jasper right now. I'm speaking of teachers at Gunnersville that I work with. They're stressed, so they need somebody that's going to come in that's going to have their back. Someone that's not going to throw work on them that's not important, or just to check a box. Anything like. They're going to know I've got their back. They know they're going to be supportive of them. That's so important to me. And I was about to say something else, but I'm going to save it toward the end. But anyway, that's my plan moving forward. That's my plan. If I'm hired, those are the things that I'm going to start doing immediately. The last thing I need to mention this as well, just be visible. Be visible. Be a part of the community. I've got 3 toddlers. You're going to see me coaching T-ball. You're going to see Amy coaching T-ball. You're going to see her in the classrooms volunteering her time from time to time, making monkey bread, sending it to the office as she's doing now. She doesn't send it to the high school. She sends it to the elementary school. But that's what you're going to see of us. So that's my plan.
Let me add to that. And I heard how you was gonna make the smooth transition with the community and everyone by you're a people's person and everything. But your governing style, everybody have a different style. Some people may be used to, and here in Gadsden, most of our superintendents, they have a lengthy tenure as superintendent. So, say Dr. Miller been superintendent about 12 years or more. Changing from his style to your governing style, how would people adjust to your governing style, and how would you get them to buy in to the way that you're going to be doing it?
Okay. Again, relationships. It's huge. It's very important. I like to gain as many perspectives as possible when making a decision. I go back to expertise and experience. I am a collaborative leader by nature. I'm a servant leader. As superintendent, I'm no more important than the custodian or the teacher that I work with. I'm a human being just like them, and I put my pants on the same way they do. And as superintendent, yes, they have to respect the position. I don't have to be a jerk to my subordinates. I don't have to be ugly to them. Again, I can get them from point A to point B, and I will give you chances to get from point A to point B. But there might be a time where we have to have that stern conversation, and then we have to look at documentation and progressive discipline to get you there. And I think I'll go ahead and answer it here. I think this is where I have it. No, I think I've got it somewhere else. Let me give you an example. There was a teacher that was arriving late to school, and of course the principal tried to handle it himself. It was an elementary teacher. I'm not going to give you the grade specific, but I will say that it's between the ages of kindergarten and 3rd grade. 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And over about 20-something times, he finally had enough. He tried different ways to get her there on time. So he finally let me know what was taking place, what was happening. Now, granted, he would have these classes covered. Sometimes it would be him, sometimes it would be a neighboring teacher. But that was a problem. That was a concern. So I brought the teacher in, and with the principal, we had an informal conversation. I mentioned to you earlier that I like to make things personal. And I said to her, what if this is your child's teacher that's coming in late every day? How would that make you feel as a mom? She understood. She had a great story. She told me, hey, I'll do better. But also, I told her verbally what would take place. Okay? I didn't have it written up at this time. I just told her verbally what would take place. And I had all of that written down in my notes. It continued to happen. She was late 3 more times, 10, 15 minutes. I called her back into the office. All right, here's what's happening next. The next time that you are late to school, we're going to look. I'm going to recommend to the school board that we dock your pay 1 day, suspended without pay. The second time, it was going to be 3 days without pay. The third time, we're going to look at dismissal. I went over the steps with her, what we were planning on doing. I don't know how anybody in the world can justify a teacher being late in a classroom and kids being unsupervised. You cannot justify that to me. I don't care if they're tenured or not tenured. But if those things are taking place, they need to find themselves another job. So, again, I don't have to raise my voice to her. I'm just simply letting her know what my plan is in writing, what we're going to do with the backing of the board. And this is where you would have to back me. Because, again, you cannot justify a teacher being late regularly, and especially with the youngest of kids. Yes, sir.
Let me ask a question to that. Now, would that be difficult for you to do if this person was related to a stakeholder, someone in politics, someone that could possibly put pressure on you? Or would it be the same result? Would it be even across the board, whether they have any relationship with anyone? Because some people, if they're connected to someone, they feel like they can do anything, and no matter what you say, you're not going to do anything to them. Could you make those hard decisions?
Well, I'm going to give you an example. First of all, it's nice when you do not know anyone in a school system. It's a lot easier to make decisions. You don't know the backgrounds, you don't know who they're kin to, anything like that. But I told you earlier, we're always going to do what's right for kids. Okay? I did not hire a board member's wife because I felt we had stronger teachers that were applying. And not once, but twice. She's currently a teacher now. I'm sure she does a fine job. But I felt like we had someone stronger. Politically, I think it hurt me. But I did what was right for kids. Is it easy to do that sometimes? No. But I'm going to make it personal. And when you ask the question and you make it personal, I promise you, board members, I promise you, community, you're going to come out with a better answer. What if that's my child in that classroom? And again, I'm sure she's a great teacher. I had a committee of teachers that are good people. I always hire with a committee. An honest committee will keep you honest. And if we're hiring and we're screening these applicants and we feel like so-and-so is a stronger applicant, then that's what we need to do. So that might be why I'm not in Gunnersville today.
Dr. Reeves, this is a diverse community. How would you work to ensure that all groups are fully engaged with the schools and the system as a whole?
All right, would you mind asking that question again, please?
Sure.
As you're asking questions, I'm thinking about the media and things that might or might not go into the paper, and I don't. And for those that's in the media, I don't say those things to insult. I don't say those things to cause an uproar. I mean, this, fortunately, unfortunately, these are public interviews, so please respect that for those of you that are in the media. Again, you just try to do what's right, and that's what I try to do on a regular basis.
Okay. This is a diverse community. How would you work to ensure that all groups are fully engaged with schools and the system as a whole?
And again, I go back to relationships. I'm going to talk about relationships a lot, building and developing those relationships. Get parents into schools with the various programs that I talked about a few minutes ago, the meet and greets at different schools. But that's how I'm going to bring a diverse community together. In our hirings too, you know, uh, we've got students of all origins. We want our faculty to look like our students. That's important to me as well. Diversity is very important. So yes, those things are going to be greatly considered as we move forward, as we're hiring employees for this school system. But you know, I'm going to be visible, and I'm going to meet a lot of people. And again, I'm no better than anyone else, even if I'm the superintendent of Gadsden City Schools. That's how I was raised. That's what my mom and dad expect of me even today. I'm just a regular person, but I can get the job done. I can get it done effectively, and I can make decisions that's in the best interest of our kids. I promise you that.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go off the sheet now and ask a couple of questions to clear up some things, I hope. You identified what you perceived as two weaknesses in the Gadsden system, the performance gap, I'll describe it as that, and attendance. What did you see as far as strengths are concerned that you would have to build on?
Got to visit a couple of schools today. Got to see a lot of smiling faces. A lot of smiling faces. You know what that indicates? They've got a great culture, a great climate in those schools. That's important to me. I saw smiling faces with teachers. I saw teachers working hard, trying to help their kids be successful in the classrooms. Uh, I saw one particular school having a luncheon for individuals throughout the community, trying to get them into the school today. I thought that was a wonderful thing. Uh, you've got a great school system, but I think it has the potential to be even better. You know, when I was in the classrooms, and again, I'm just being honest with you, um, we need to have conversations to either merge schools to build new schools, or put more money into uh, renovating the schools that we have. You know, I was looking at 2x4 ceiling tiles that were old. Need to be 2x2. We need fresh paint on the walls. The schools were clean, but we're sending kids into schools that I think we could do a better job in making them look better. And there's not anything wrong with that. And that's not a negative thing on you as a board or the current superintendent. I just think we can do things better. Because if we're wanting to bring businesses into this community, they're going to come with young fathers, young dads, young mothers, moms, with kids, and they're going to look at our schools closely. And it's important that we bring all of them up to speed to where they all look great, every one of them. If we need to consolidate and redo the district lines, that's something we need to look at. But again, I haven't put the time into looking at all of those, right now, just due to the lack of time that I have. But just in a few schools, there's great things taking place in those schools. But we want them to be as attractive as possible for all of our stakeholders. Because again, the gentleman that I met at the mayor's office, they wanted to pull businesses in here, but we need to make sure all of our schools are up to the standards we need them to be. That's our job as board members and superintendents.
Did you review the existing strategic plan?
No, sir, I did not. No, sir, I didn't get a chance to do that.
Fine. I think this last thing, there are all kind of buzzwords and catchphrases in all these questions, and one of the big buzzwords is accountability. I sometimes have a hard time understanding when people talk about accountability when you're talking about student performance. Who do you hold accountable for that as superintendent?
That would be our leaders. That'd be the principals we hire. They need to be into the classrooms. They need to make sure teachers are doing their job. And again, when you create a culture and a climate where I'm not out to get your job, the principals are not out to get your job, we're out to help our kids. And when you create that culture and climate that, you know, we need to have data meetings, we need to look at where our kids are, where we want them to be, not as a gotcha moment, because it's the right thing to do, people. It's the right thing to do. So that's the climate and culture that we would move to if it doesn't already exist.
So the focus of accountability is the principal. Is
Sir.
that what I understood you to say?
Buck stops with me, sir, as superintendent. But those discussions will be made with the principal to make sure we understand the same expectations of our teachers to getting the job done. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Reeves, share with us and explain on when you all were expected to improve and address a funding gap.
When would this position begin? June 1, July 1? What is the expected date? July 1. Of course, it would be at a disadvantage coming in that late, but certainly when you're looking at the funding gap, you want to look at your local units. I'm not sure exactly how many local units you have, but kind of give you an idea how local units work for those of you that may not know. First of all, city schools do have local units, and that's a good thing because city schools can offer some things that county schools cannot. That's just reality. And so there should be a healthy number of local units so that you can have your fine arts, your music, your arts, maybe even additional coaches because that's what's expected of the community. That's what's, that's just what you see in city schools. Goodness, go back to the original question, please. What was the original question? I'll get back to it.
Share with us and explain on when you
Okay, yep, I got it now. Going back to the local unit part, let's say that you had 30 local units, and again, I have no idea how many you have. You can multiply that number by about $75,000 to about $80,000 per unit, and that's what's coming out of the local taxes right here, of your tax base, right here in Gadsden. So 10 of those would be $800,000. So first of all, you've got to ask yourself, all right, do we need those 10 local units? What programs are they over? What are they doing? And if we as a board decide, yes, we do need those 10, then obviously we need to keep those 10. If it's 15 or 20, then yeah, we probably need those. But we've got to make sure that we're not overspending what we're bringing in. That's important, okay? Eventually, the school system would go broke if that was taking place. So you've got to look carefully at those local units. Coming in the first 3 months, I can't tell you, the first few weeks. I mean, yeah, I can have those conversations with the CSFO, but again, that's something that you'll look at over a period of time as you get to know the school system a little bit better so that you can make those decisions as you go along to improve the finances of the school. So I think that would be my answer to your question.
Okay, thank you. How would you help staff members accountable for student achievement while balancing the demands put on teachers?
Okay, and again, I have worked with teachers on how to improve in their classroom. We'll assign professional development of some sort, whether it's classroom management or some other issue that's going on in the classroom to help that particular teacher. And of course, the expectation would be to grow from that. And of course, we would have grade level and content area meetings on a regular basis, looking at our data, looking at our strengths and weaknesses and how we can move kids forward. As principal, again, I've dismissed non-tenured teachers from time to time that were not performing, and we've had some conversations with tenured teachers that were not performing. And again, I go back to relationships, you can get on to where you need to be more times than not. And then finally, just classrooms are visited on a regular basis by administrators. Administrators must get into the classrooms, and that would be non-negotiable. They've got to get into the classroom. Kids have to see their assistant principal and principals in the classrooms. That's going to help cut down on discipline, any classroom management that we might have, but it also ensures that the expectations we have set forth are being met by our teachers. It's okay to have a little push, a little nudge. If I'm your superintendent, one of the first things that we're going to do when we bring the school system here, we're going to look at some of our data. We're going to look at attendance, and we're going to look at the gap between the CCRS and also graduation. And I want them to start thinking about those things because it's important. And I may not have all the answers. They may have answers that supervisors and myself may not be thinking of. But, we're going to present it. We're going to go over it and say, hey, guys, we got to do better. We got to get our kids to school. How can we do that? And hopefully we've got most of that plan taken care of in the summer. But I'd like to have teachers' input into that as well. You had mentioned the question earlier. I thought y'all got off the script about the funding gap. We had a funding gap at Cherokee Elementary, and we were raising about $6,000 to $7,000 each year with our PTO. That was in my first year there, and prior, we were not making a lot of money in fundraising, but we needed to do better. And the way we were able to do that, I brought in a cookie dough company, Otis Spunkmeyer Cookie Dough. Now, you can't really go out and tell kids to sell X number of cookie dough and you're going to get a prize. I mean, it works with some, but for the most part, it does not. So what we did in 2008 when we started this, I got a picture of IMAX, and I put it on the projector. We brought them to the gym. And I said, guys, this is what we'll do. If you sell X amount of cookie dough, we're going to buy 30 IMAX, because Apple was the thing then. It was still the thing today, for that matter. But Apple was the thing, and the kids, it generated a lot of excitement. They went out and sold $46,000, $47,000 worth of cookie dough. It translated into about $18,000 profit for the school, and then we used some of our federal monies as well. And we went out and bought 30 computers for those kids, and they would have computer every other week, and they were excited. And from that day forward, we would do that each year. All right, guys, this is what we're going to do this year. We need you to go out and do this. And again, it produced the results that we needed it to. And also, trying to be innovative with funding. I'm just thinking of the time at Jackson County where we reduced the local units from 17 to 12. And to kind of give you an idea, I think Jefferson County has 0 local units, by the way. And I think they used to have 200 just about 2 years ago before Craig Pouncey got there, or a couple of years before he got there. So they reduced it down to 0. For Jackson County, we reduced it from 17 to 12, and that was a significant savings. And again, you take those 5 units, multiply it times $80,000. Reason it's $80,000 because you're looking at salary and also benefits, and that's what, $400,000 if my math is correct. But so that was a significant savings as well. But yes, I'm sorry, I thought you went off script, and I was not thinking about the next question.
Okay, as we select a new superintendent for Gadsden City Schools, what are the top 3 strengths or attributes you believe you bring that our district could benefit from?
I'm always going to do what's right for kids. I'm going to have 3 kids in this school system as well. I want to treat all the kids of Gadsden as if they are my own. I want my principals to do that. I want my teachers to do that. I want you as a board to do that, because we're representing all of our kids. That's our job. That's what's required of us. So that's one. Honesty, integrity. I'm not going to manipulate things. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to let you know the good, the bad, the ugly, and then it's up to us to do what's best for our kids. I got to listen to Dr. Elko the other day at the High School Athletic Association. He talked about bad things are going to happen from time to time. So what? Now what? Okay, we can gripe and complain about it, but we're not going to get anything done. So what? Now what? How are we going to respond? So that would have to be our focus, our continued focus as we go along. I talked about communication earlier. I will, if this was a board meeting right now, the very next day we're going to send out a board brief as to what went on in tonight's meeting. It's important that our teachers know that. we could change policy on something right now. It's in our board policy. But really and truly, our teachers are not getting on the school website to see what changes have been made. But if you email that out to them, then we're getting that communications out there to them. And they would know what's expected, what would be expected of them with the new policy change. The board brief would also entail personnel, hirings, resignations, retirements. It's also a time for a superintendent's report where I can throw out a few messages as well, or announcements to the teachers. So we would do a board brief every month after a board meeting. Um, Weekly updates to you. Some of you might prefer email. Some of you might prefer that I pick up the phone. I've never dealt with a board staff of 7. I've had 5, and of course I've been on the phone all day with all 5 of them. And that's fine because that's kind of what's expected of the superintendent. But certainly I would email you updates as to what's going on in the school system. And of course, if there's something major, obviously you're going to get a phone call from me, depending on how major it is. Or if we've got 3 or 4 cars out here and maybe we've got drug dogs doing a search, then I would just text you, hey, I want you to know why we've got police cars out here today, because you're probably going to get a few phone calls. Hey, what's going on at the high school? So it's my job to get that information out there to you. And so communications is important. And then finally, just a personal goal of mine from when I leave a position or a school or a system is to make people think, and I don't say this in boast, but folks, this is an interview, and you have to sell yourself, and I hope you understand that. But what are we going to do without Bart? It's nice when people back home in Guntersville, man, we wish you were back. I'd love for you to come back. We miss you. We miss your family. Please come back. It's nice in Jasper. Please don't leave us. We want you to be here. We want you to stay. That's a nice feeling. And again, that's based on relationships and working with people and being genuinely interested in what they do and trying to help them be successful. Folks, this is not brain surgery. This is not rocket science. You treat people right, you treat people how you want to be treated, I promise you we can move mountains by working together. Those are the things I believe in. And those are the things I practice and I model daily. That's what my mom and dad taught me. That's what I expect of my children as well. And that's what I'm going to expect of the children in Gadsden. So, again, if I'm your guy or person, I'm going to affect people around me to do what's right and what's best for these kids. That's our job. And that's me.
Thank you, Dr. Reeves. Board members, do you have additional questions? Dr. Reeves, we have inundated you with questions tonight. Do you have a question or two for us?
What are you looking for in a superintendent?
Okay, since I answered last night, I'll let somebody else answer tonight. Tell Dr. Reeves what we want in a superintendent. Everybody talking at once? Okay.
Well, what I hear you say, it sounds like your area of giftedness is relationships, and I think relationships are very important. In our system, there's been a lot of change, and with change, there's sometimes fear, fear of the unknown, and I just wonder, do you have any thoughts about a new superintendent coming in? How will you, and morale? I'll be honest, I think I've heard, morale's low. So how do you encourage people that are in the trenches every day and they're working hard? And like you said, teaching is a very demanding profession. So how will you lift those up that maybe feel tired and discouraged?
You've got to let them know you've got their back, not only in saying it, but in your actions. You've got to let them know that you support them, you value them. They are the ones who make a difference in our kids' lives. That's number one. You've got to do that, and that's part of the relationship factor. Um, that's how you can produce a great school climate, and that's something that we had at Cherokee in my 8 years there. That's something that we're working towards at Jasper right now. You can't do it in 1 year. It's going to take 2 to 3 years to get that going in the direction that it needs to be going. But again, teachers are going to know that I care about them, that I'm genuine in what I say and what I do, um, because I'm in it for the right reasons. And um, I go back to, you know, we're not going to give them busy work for the sake of giving them busy work or anything like that. That's just not necessary. They need to be in the classroom teaching our kids. That's what they need to be doing, and we've got to give them that time to do that. One of the things I've learned this year at the high school, the countless number of interruptions that you have in the high school that are needed. The guy selling rings, he needs to meet with kids. Now, granted, we try to put them in the lunchroom from time to time, but sometimes he needs to meet with all 10th graders or 11th graders, or maybe it's graduation supplies, things of that nature. Maybe we want to have a speaker there. Maybe the choir is wanting to perform to sell their program in hopes that they can recruit kids, to come into choir. Or maybe it's the band that wants to perform. They're all legit reasons, all good reasons. And what we're doing in our schedule next year, we're on the block system as well, but we also have what is called a mini block. The mini block is half the time of a regular block. It meets for about 45 minutes, where the regular blocks meet for about 75 minutes. But what we're going to do next year, number one, that time will be devoted to remediation, helping kids who are struggling, helping kids who may want to try to go from 28 to 30 on their ACT. Those are the top things that we're going to be doing. But also, since it is a non-credited class and it's one that you do not get a grade, anytime we need to have an assembly or anytime I need to meet with the kids as their principal to go over things, maybe to brag on them or maybe to talk about concerns, that would be the time that I would meet with those kids. And, that's uninterrupted instructional time. But my goodness, we are changing schedule all the time just so that certain groups can get in there and meet with the kids. Counselors this time of the year, with course verification sheets and trying to get the schedule built for next year, and they're meeting with kids quite often. It's needed. It's legit. They have to do it, but we're pulling kids out of class. So in my first year as principal there, you see these things. Okay, we can do this better. Let's figure out a way to do it. So I got with my counselors, my assistant principals, and we've got a plan in place that's going to make things better in that area. And that's also going to be a time where really it's kind of like a brain break, so to speak. We're going to offer things. For example, let's say your interest is power walking. During that 45 minutes, if you're not a part of that remediation group, then you're going to have kids that can sign up for power walking and go walk around the campus for that 45 minutes to come back in. Those that are being remediated, we don't want them to go through that all year, but we're going to assign them for 2 9 weeks to give them every chance we can to be successful. But we also want them to take part in some of these creative activities as well. When we get ready to take work keys in October, I can guarantee you that our seniors will be assigned to work keys preparation that first 9 weeks of school. When we give the ACT in March or April, whenever it will be next year, the 2 9 weeks, some of our strugglers, and even those, well, we'll probably assign all of them, to be honest with you, all of our juniors, to get ready for the ACT. I mean, it's just smart planning, but again, it takes a lot of planning. For a principal to go into a school to affect change, it takes about 3 to 4 years. You can't expect it immediately, but you can see the progress that's being made to make those changes take place, because it's going to have a significant impact on student achievement and the school as a whole.
You asked the question about, you asked us, what do we want to see in a superintendent? Honesty. Someone that can be true to themselves, that can make decisions and be able to sleep well at night. Someone that's not easily persuaded, can handle political pressure, one that's not caught up in nepotism or giving favorites. Someone that's concerned for all our kids. If you have looked on our website, you know that we have a blue ribbon school, but out of 12 schools, we ain't got but one. That's a big problem. And we can beat on our chest and say, we got one school that's doing that. But if you're going to govern over 12 schools, all 12 schools need to be on the same level. You know, we have a lot of blacks and African Americans and a lot of Hispanics. And a lot of people don't like talk about race. They don't like talk about the blacks, the whites. But we have a lot of African Americans and Hispanics that is not where they need to be. Uh, do we have concern? You not being African American, would you really be true and say, okay, I'll go into the poverty-stricken areas and go into the schools that are struggling real bad and may have a D, may have an F on their report card, put more focus on that particular area. Because I think about a lot of times when you go through therapy, you do therapy on the area that need work on it, the weaker limb, whatever. You don't work on the other areas, you work on that area. Can you bring everyone up in the system? Can you say that everybody can learn at a high level? We need somebody that's really gonna roll their sleeves up, really pour into all the children, and get our system where we can be very proud of every school, not just one. That's what I'm looking for.
Amen. I don't know who was clapping, but amen to that. I want to go back. I know I repeat myself a lot. I have 3 kids. I don't love them any less than the others. I told you that I'm going to treat these children as my own. And when we do need to focus our attention at some of our disadvantaged schools, then obviously we need to do that. And again, I'm not sure if these discussions have taken place before, but we probably need to look at our district. When was the last time the district's been reassigned? When was the last time that took place? We probably need to look at it. We might need to look at merging some of our schools. Uh, I don't know if you know this, but in order for a school to be created and be successful monetarily to make sure that it's self-sustaining, you've got to have a minimum of 250 kids. And I know with some of the numbers here, we're kind of close to that 250 mark. But would it be good for us to merge the two schools to create a new school? Again, I don't know if we just have to have those discussions. But to go back to your original question, can we raise the bar and raise student achievement with all of our schools? Yes, we can. Collective efficacy, the belief in one another that we can make a difference. If you believe it, all of you believe it, I believe it, and our teachers believe it, yes, we can do that. And we need to go in there with high expectations. We don't need to be, we did subpar last year, so we're just going to say maybe we're hoping for a 5% get. No, we need to raise the bar. We owe it to our kids. We owe it to our kids. And again, I keep going back. We've got to do what's right.
Anyone else? Thank you so much, Dr. Reeves, for your interest in Gadsden City Schools. We thank you and your wife for coming and being with us today. I hope you had a good time. I know Ms. Stewart and Mr. Kyler indicated you had a good little tour of the city and everything, and I'm glad. And we thank you. Okay.
Thank you. We have had a great time, but I'll be honest with you, I was a little worried about the Friday the 13th date, just to be honest with you. So anyway, thank y'all for having us. We have
Ms.
enjoyed it.
Holland,
So thank you.
do we have any refreshments outside?
Yes.
Yes, there are. Okay, thank you, Mr. Parker. I didn't see you. Thank